people in the waiting room in. Let me just, oh, there's one more right there. Admit. Sorry, guys, just bear with me 1 second. Thank you for your patience, too. Hopefully, you guys weren't in the waiting room too long. My previous call just went over by like literally a minute. So I hopped right off of that and onto this one, and we will dive right in here in 1 second. Just got a couple more people coming in the waiting room there. There is William, Stephen. And that looks like it for now. We will leave that open as always. And okay, guys, and we will dive right into obviously another weekly DaaS sales workshop here. You guys, as you know, every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern is the workshop of the week that I run in. That kind of falls in line with my area of expertise in terms of, both just high ticket sales overall, but as well as agency and data agency sales. So I always like to say I love to gear these workshops around, the packaging, the pricing, the positioning, every aspect of the sales offer. With data as a service and using kind of Audience Labs platform, as well as, we do call audits on some occasions. I've actually only had two submitted, I think, this year from our DaaS clients that sent me over a call and asked me to record it, review it. And when I did, we break it down on these workshops. Every once in a while, when people volunteer, we'll do some role plays, overcome objections, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes we just kind of dive into some high level overall sales lessons. And that's kind of where I left off last week. So, as I mentioned, if any of you guys are on this week that weren't on last week, if you want to catch the first part of this, I'll show you right where to find the replay and all that. But this is kind of part two off of the first new sales script or framework I've dropped for you guys in the last couple of years. The one that was already in the existing resources is still tried and true and proven and works and delivers great results. But as anything, as time goes on, there's trends and shifts in the market. There's different intricacies, nuances, subtleties to what's working, to people's attention spans, to the call flow, all those things. So I've kind of rewritten and we've re-updated our first kind of sales script in the better part of 3 years since we've kind of launched one. We've always making subtle tweaks and customizations for each particular offer, and I think that kind of comes with the territory. But I want to go over, the rest of where I left off last week and with the new sales script. As I'm going through this, guys, and I see William, you already dropped one. I'll get back to the questions. I'm gonna break, halfway through this workshop, get to some of the questions, and then I'm going to leave 10 or 15 minutes at the end where people can unmute and kind of do a live Q&A as well. So as I'm going here, if you have any questions, anything specifically you want me to address, again, I'll chime in either when I get to a good stopping point or about halfway into the workshop, check everything in the comments and reply to those. And I'll leave a window at the end for people to unmute, and I'll call on you and do a bit of a Q&A there. But I just want to really try to make sure I finish all this today so we don't go into a third week on kind of the same lesson. There should be no need for it if I can kind of get through what I need to. So let me just start off with sharing my screen here. And as usual, the resource that I give to you guys and I share every single week in terms of what I put together for you. And this would have two updates to, if you saw this anytime before the last 2 weeks, it would have one update to this, even if you were on here last week and saw the most recent update. So let me just cover that real quick. And in the meantime, as I'm doing that, I'm going to get this link and go drop it in the chat for anybody that hasn't already received this or doesn't have it handy, or you're on your first, sales workshop and you've never been to this one before. So what's covered on my screen and what I'm going over is that link right there in the Zoom chat here in this room, in this Zoom meeting. So this is the overall, resources I put together for building your data as a service sales process. Again, as I always say, whether you're starting a DaaS agency from scratch or whether you have an existing agency and you're just looking to enhance your sales process to make it more efficient, more effective, there's a lot of great resources in here. In terms of the two updates, well, last week, and anybody that wasn't on and where I left off, number 9 was never on this list before last week. This was always 8 resources. And prior to that, 3 months before, it was 7 resources. And I add stuff as you guys ask me to, or as we drop new things that I think are super relevant and applicable to, an efficient and effective sales process. So a few months ago, a lot of you guys were like, Ray, it would help if we could hear some of your sales call recordings. So I dropped a document with about 20 of my sales call recordings. Of course, I told you we just wrote this new script and framework, and we are using this internally and for a lot of our done-for-you clients. So as soon as we had it tested and all the kinks worked out and it was ready to go, I dropped it to you guys before, we've taken anywhere else. So that was the update last week. Now, as of this week, each week, I'm sorry, not each week, but each week when I go over this, I kind of cover everything here, right? And number three on here, for anybody that hasn't seen this Google Doc has some of our current ads, email campaigns we've had success with, creative short form copy we've used in, cold email and cold LinkedIn, B2B outreach, etc. Number one and two, in terms of the ad copy, you'll see some updated ones from some new creative my team launched and new campaigns that are currently running. And we actually saw great results. First day we launched those campaigns, I know we had 25 quality bookings. And then checking I'm always like, a feedback and optimized type of guy. So being in constant communication with my sales team and the feedback today, my top producing reps are telling me that the quality is enhanced as well. More qualified buyers, more people ready to sign up and enroll today, and more people with the budgets we're looking for. So it's great to see when you have stuff that's working. I knew before we even really launched this one, I just kind of knew because I know what works and what doesn't. I knew the creative would work. Until you test and you get the results and you get the feedback, you don't know what needs to be optimized or tweaked or how well it's going to work. But I updated a couple of our newer campaigns just to share with all you guys on number three in here. So again, where I left off last week and what we're going to be covering is what was number 9 on this document. And that's the new Audience Lab sales script that I've built and dropped for you guys. And last week we left off right on the find the pain, and the little objections that we kind of break down in each aspect of this. And again, going back to last week, just really quickly, if anybody is wondering, and then I'll get right back into today's lesson. But in our school platform here, whenever you are looking for any of my workshops, and this replay will be there later today if anyone wants to go back through it, in this top menu, just go to the sales channel and then scroll down and you'll see the most recent workshop. Shouldn't be too far. So here we go, 7 days ago, which makes sense. I run this once a week. So there's part 1 from this, right in school, right in the sales channel, if anyone wants to go back and see what they missed, and kind of the intro and the beginning of this script and this lesson. Okay, so now we'll get back into where we left off again. So we left off, and just to highlight, I'm not going to go back through all these sections. I just want to go through the main bold. So we start with the intro, opening momentum. We go into the discovery or the situation or the gathering intel phase. I've seen it called different things in a bunch of different scripts. Then we go into uncovering and finding the pain a little. And what we start to do is we start to dig a little deeper and the impact of the pain. And even when we find the pain, as I covered last week, and I don't want to go too much through last week's lesson, but we also want to find, what I call the root or the real pain and the real problem, and not just the symptom or the surface level problem and pain. So a lot of times when you're like, hey, Mr. Client, what's the problem? Well, our ad spend's too high. Our cost per lead and acquisition's too high. Like a lot of times we want to go a little further. And why is that a problem right now? How long has it been like this? Do you think that's attributed to this or this, right? And be like, oh, so now that you're saying that it's more about the creative and that's what you think is the real problem, not actually ad spend, but the creative, right? So we can diagnose it and get to what we would call a root or a real problem and kind of glance over, not glance or gloss over, but kind of work past the symptom or surface level problem, because I've run and hosted a lot of sales calls and listened to a lot and watched a lot. And normally when I ask kind of what's the problem or what are you struggling with, I pretty much always get a more symptom or surface level problem that isn't actually at the crux of, what my unexpected solution and my offer is ultimately going to solve and deliver, the problem that's going to solve and the result it's going to deliver. So diving a little deeper into the problem. And then once we've really uncovered the root or the real problem, that's when you might want to ask the question to dive into the impact of the problem, right? So how is that issue currently showing up for you, Jake? Is that showing up for you personally, in your business, financially, stress-wise? Is that bringing problems home? Tell me what the impact that's having on you, both personally and professionally, right? And then let them dive into that. Now, I will say selling data specifically and more B2B sales are a little less the emotional sale and more the analytical and the ROI sale. So I don't think this comes into play as much as more a business to consumer or a more transformational offer, something like weight loss or mindset or something that's not a tangible ROI offer. I think you want to dive into the emotion and impact and really highlight that. I think with B2B offers and more analytical offers, it's still good to dive into this question, especially for kind of a more seasoned rep that wants the prospect to open up and really talk about this, because a lot of times they're going to give you something big in there to tie it back down to, right? When I ask that question, you could get things like, well, Ray, we've been dealing with this problem, as I said, for like 3 to 6 months. I still haven't found a solution, so I'm starting to bang my head against the wall. And yeah, it's leading to a little bit of stress and lost revenue, and I'm not able to take my wife on the vacation I promised her. Right. So now later in the call, that might be information I want to tie back to when the guy's like, and again, I'll tie this back probably now, but later when let's just say I get an objection like, hey, I'm not really ready to move forward. Actually, this isn't that much of a problem. Well, Jake, I thought you just told me earlier in the conversation, like you've been banging your head against the wall. You haven't been able to solve this. Therefore, you're losing some revenue and you can't take your wife on that vacation. So, how long do you want to keep letting that be a problem before you solve it? Right. And I can tie him right back to what he said, which is very, very impactful on sales calls, tying people down to the words that come out of their mouth rather than me projecting, what the problem or what the thing is. I'm just quoting him and saying, you said that earlier. What's changed between now and 20 minutes ago? 20 minutes ago, you said that was a big problem. Now you're saying it's not a big deal. Which one is it? Right. And they kind of contradict themselves. And you gotta point it out. I've always said the highest caliber A plus player reps are the people that aren't afraid to challenge prospects, that aren't afraid to hold people accountable to their own words and to making a decision that ultimately is going to better their life or their business 30, 60, 90 days down the road. And then that prospect, and I've had this happen so many times, will come back and thank you. Ray, thanks for being a little tough with me on the call and challenging me and making me make that decision. Now I'm making 20K a month, but before I was making 5K a month. Like it's made a big difference, right? So you can't ever get that thanks and that gratitude if you're not willing to challenge people and hold them accountable to making a decision, especially when you know that this is a perfect client and your product, software, solution, offer is going to deliver them a result or likely solve this problem, right? So I think that stuff's really important. And then we kind of dive and we always, what I like to call future pace people, right? So hey, Bob, why don't you describe your ideal solution to me? Basically, if I handed you the keys, what needs to be true, which is one way to say it. And that's kind of a more basic way, again, for an offer like this. I mean, it could just, you guys can always switch the wording to whatever's comfortable, as I always say. This is a framework. I like to, even though it says script at the top, I should go change that because I always correct myself when I say script, because a framework is I want to say the structure, the flow, and the strategy or approach behind it. An actual script means I read that word for word every time. That's not what I'm saying here. Everything I always say is take this and put it in your words. So I might say, hey, what does an ideal solution look like to you if you were to have, and again, let's go back to the problem earlier. Your rising ad costs and and you think the struggle is the creative. So what do you think a perfect solution looks like to you? Right. And have them kind of describe that. That is another question that I use that helps me customize the pitch. And I'm going to talk about that a little when I get down 2 or 3 more segments. But what I like to listen to is, hey, Ray, in an ideal world, I think I need somebody that can, knock out creative for us because we've always struggled with that. But I also need better ad costs and likely, better targeting on top of the creative because the creative is great. But if I don't have the right audience or I'm putting a lot of my budget into a testing phase, it's not going to be as effective. Right. So now later when I get into my pitch and what I want to drop to them, I'm going to really highlight how my product or service or solution is going to solve problem 1 and 2 that he just told me about, rather than maybe dive into talking about identity resolution and the enrichment feature. When this guy, that's probably not where I want to start with and what I want to highlight. Those aren't going to solve problem 1 and 2 for him, but getting him some dialed in market audiences and giving him an introduction to a top tier creative agency that we're partnered with would probably solve some of those problems. So that's what I'm going to cover, right? Or whatever. And again, in that example, I was going more back to a basic, agency. Most of the people that we're speaking with are, especially from your guys' perspective, our brands are advertisers with, again, their cost per lead, cost per acquisition is too high. Ad profitability is not where it is. Not getting the same results I got with ad spend a few years ago. Spending way too much in testing. All those things where we're going to really just like dial in their audiences, and that's going to be the emphasis of our call if that's the real problem. Now, if on this call the prospect says to you, we have this website and we're driving 100,000 people per month, and their conversion rate is about 3%, that means we have about 97,000 bounce visitors. I'm going to probably lead with the identity resolution, show them how we can drive more leads in without spending any more on ads, and then cross-sell or upsell the audiences later. So it's always going to vary depending on what I uncover as the problem and what they have for existing foundations. Are they doing a lot more in ad spend? Are they driving a lot more traffic? Is it a combination of the two, which go hand in hand when a business is spending a decent amount or has those dialed in? And then we're going to talk about both solutions and how we can slap the pixel on the website and get them targeted audiences to lower their cost per lead and acquisition, right? So again, I'm just saying that to say all these questions I'm asking now are giving me the again, the kind of blueprint on how I want to lay out my pitch when I get to that. So and then once we get into the describe your ideal solution, again, I like to get into what have you already tried, and I usually make that a two-part question. So what have you already tried to, get your cost per lead and cost per, well, we tried hiring an outside agency. We tried taking a course. I tried hiring a new media buyer, whatever, right? Whatever they're going to say. And then I usually take that one step further. Well, Bob, so you tried that already. Let me know, what did you like about that? Okay, great. And on the flip side of things, what didn't you like about that, and why aren't you still doing it? Or why didn't you get the result you were looking for, do you think? Right? And the more info I can extract from him right there is also going to be very, very helpful in the next couple of segments of this. And then we get into, as I always talk about, future pacing and utilizing a tie down. So, James, if you fix this, what's different, right? How does your day change? How does your business change? How's life? Do you honestly think if you had the right process, you'd get this outcome? Right. And that's kind of a loaded question. I would actually break that down, and that's why it's in separate lines. I would go with that first one, let him answer, and then piggybacking off that, once he says, well, Ray, if I had this problem fixed, what's changed is I'm not yelling at my team all the time about why do we have the creative we have? Why is my ad cost rising? I'm not hiring and fighting. I'm not hiring and firing and looking for new media buyers. I can spend more time on fulfillment and generating business than on creative and, sitting in here tracking metrics and looking at my dashboard. So those are some of the things that would change. All right, that's great. I agree with you, Bob. Those things would be great if you didn't have to spend all day at your dashboard or micromanaging your team or hiring and firing talent, which is costly in itself. Now, do you honestly think if you had the right process and let's say an in-market database with only your ideal audience, that we could actually get the outcome of lowering your cost per lead and acquisition? Well, I mean, yeah, if I had a first party intent-based like in-market database where I knew it had my audience and my pre-existing like winning audience and my ideal client, I'd be pretty, I'd venture to guess, Ray, that I'd probably get the outcome of lower cost per lead and acquisition. Great. And then on the flip side of that, James, what if nothing changes? I mean, you already told me this has been a problem for somewhere between 3 and 6 months, and now you're on this call and you're actively looking for a solution. So tell me, what does this look like if you're still having this problem in your business another 3 weeks, 3 months, hell, even 3 years from now, right? And then, just leave that question for him for a minute. And this is usually what I hear in reply to that, guys. Well, Ray, if this keeps happening for 3 weeks, I mean, it's already been 3 to 6 months. I'll deal with another 3 weeks. Another 3 months, I'm starting to feel like I'm a bit of a failure because I already know this is a problem. I'm on calls. I'm actively looking for solutions. So there's really no excuse for it to go on for another 3 months. And if my costs keep rising in ads and my cost per lead and acquisition don't get back under control, I don't know if I'll still be in business and running ads 3 years from now. So it's hard to say, right? And they're going to kind of future pace themselves and say, I mean, what he just told me with that without saying so is if I don't get this problem solved, there's a chance I could be out of business in 3 years. Right. I mean, I could just sum that down. Now, I drew the connection and kind of skipped over that, but he did just say that in essence. So that's where that question goes in handy. And that's one of the best ways to throw in the cost of inaction or the urgency tactic with making it truly about him and his business and just asking him how he foresees things working if we don't get said problem solved, especially guys, when I said we isolate them down to problem number 1 and 2. That's why we go a little deeper when we get the problem and get to the real problem. That's why we go a little deeper into the impact. That's why we go a little deeper and ask him what he feels like an ideal solution, what would look like, and how that would change his life. All of those things now get up to the point where he's basically saying, we've identified the problem. Yes, it needs to be fixed. And if I don't get it fixed in the next couple of years, hell, I don't even know if I'll still be in business in this case, right? And then we get into the pitch. And I like to, can do this in a number of ways. I'll give you a couple different word tracks here, but let's just read the one on the screen first. All right, so let me show you exactly what we're doing, why it works, and how people just like you are using it to scale. And then we go through a framework. We demo the platform, and then how to plug in people and get paid. So we show, we do it a little different than you guys, right? What we're doing primarily, you guys know the difference. We sell primarily to agency owners that are more looking to resell it. So this is going to be a little different. And I'm going to go through it more from your perspective here in a second as well, just selling to the brands and the advertisers and the end user and end consumer. And then we have certain resources that our team knows to screen share and walk through. I like to do a combination of what I call, visual learning and visual tools and visual sales, along with the description of the demonstration. And what I find and what studies show is people are paying better attention when you're actually screen sharing and showing them rather than just talking. And if I'm doing no screen share right now, people just pay more attention. And of course, the more the more attractive, the more, informative, and just the more effective we can make those visual resources, the better you're going to see performance when you go to drop the offer and pitch it in terms of how much people buy into that, right? So we walk them through certain docs, certain demos. We share our quick win modules and how people come in and get the fast wins in the first 30 or 60 days being a DaaS agency, and kind of lay out the blueprint and future pace them with what's worked for our existing or previous clients. Right? So a lot of times I've always said, and I still go by this, I like to ask permission before I go in the pitch. Now, they're already on this call and you're this far in, they pretty much know, but I just like to be respectful and say something along the lines of another good word track here when I'm diving into the pitch is, all right, so he just answered this question, right? So let's just piggyback it right off the previous thing, and let's pretend I didn't sidebar to explain any of this. All right, Bob. So yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. If you don't get it solved in 3 weeks, it's not going to be an end of the world. I understand 3 years. I mean, 3 months it'd be frustrating, and 3 years, you just said it yourself. You've had vast uncertainty and not even sure if you'd be in business. Hey, is it cool if I share with you exactly how our software helps business owner combat this problem and get that solution, so you don't have to worry about being out of business in 3 years? Are you cool if I show you that, Bob? Yeah, right. Yeah, I'd love to see that. That'd be really helpful. All right, cool. So, and then I kind of dive right into it from there and dive into this part, right? But that's always a great way to segue right off their previous answer, recap it, and then, hey, is it cool if I show you how we overcome that problem? How our existing clients have already on the other side of that, how they dropped their cost per lead and acquisition, how they've increased profitability, how they're back on a super profitable trajectory and ROI with their ad spend. It's hard to say after this part of the call, no, Ray, don't show me how other people are doing successfully what I'm struggling with, right? That's basically what they'd be saying there if they kind of didn't give you permission to go into your pitch, right? And then once we pitched, we've shared some resources, and I have a whole like module and lesson on like the pitch and me going through that. I don't have time to do that in real time and bring up all the assets. That would just be way too long of a lesson. But I have another one on that. If anybody wants to just shoot me a DM and say you want to see a pitch or a custom pitch, and I'll show you what that looks like if that will be really, really helpful. But once I've done the pitch, guys, for me, and I think everybody should be on the same page here. I know not everybody does it this way, but the pitch and the price are totally separate. They don't go hand in hand. Never for me, never. I'm not saying some businesses don't do that. I'm not saying some of you guys don't do that. I'm not saying some people don't have it in the slide that they're sharing here when they're going through here. They might be sharing a pitch deck with this screen share, and the last slide might have all their pricing. If that's the case, I recommend either taking the pricing off it or waiting for that last slide until you get down to the actual close and price present aspect of it. So pitch and price are two different things. The pitch is where you're talking about the solutions you provide, how you show that the how you solve the problem they're struggling with. And we talk about results, expectations, timelines, and how to move forward, right? And make sure they're bought in. So before I ever get to price, I like to do the belief test, or what I call the temp check, right? And again, I kept this script and I tried to, one of the big things you'll notice between this one and my other one is this one's just much more concise. And that's one thing I've noticed just monitoring a lot of sales calls. A lot of people are keeping it short and sweet, and that's great. I actually prefer the concise, but you might want to say a little more to, build a little rapport. You might want to add a little humor in when you're feeling out the call, right? There's all kinds of ways we can do this. So once I've done the pitch, I might say like, hey, Bob, based on everything we discussed, let's get real here, man. On a scale of say 1 to 10, 1, no shot, this helps me. 10 was sign me up like yesterday. Where are you, right? Or the other line when I'm making a joke out of it. So, Bob, on a scale of say 1 to 10, 1, Ray, you're ugly, let's hang up now. 10, I need this injected in my business yesterday. Where do you kind of fall on that end of the spectrum, right? And you want them to tell you back. I always like to say, for me personally, what I gauge myself on is if I get an 8 or higher, I'm usually pretty content about kind of going right into price. I might ask one question, but if I get, and in this case, I left it between a 7 because I don't think everybody is quite going to have the acumen or maybe expect to get an 8 as often as I do. I don't know. I just wanted to put it like one level lower, but I like an 8 or higher before I get into more. And even with an 8 or higher, I would still say this. All right, so you're almost a 10. You're an 8 out of 10, right, Bob? That tells me two things. Number one, you see the effectiveness in what I offer. And number two, I explain that clearly and you fully understand how we solve that problem. Is that safe to say? Yes, Ray, that's safe to say. Okay, so you gave me an 8, Bob. Let me just ask you, what was missing or what didn't I show you that needed to be there for you to give me a 9 or a 10? I'm just curious, right? And they might say, well, Ray, you showed me the platform and all this and all that, and it all looks great, but I'm kind of, overwhelmed by all this tech stuff, and I'm just worried about whether not enough support. I'm not sure if I'm going to get the results. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that, Bob, because I didn't really have the chance when we were going into what we do to cover every aspect. And feel free to ask me questions. We probably offer a lot more than you even know, but we offer 11 weekly workshops per week for support. Our DaaS clients get a one-on-one booking link to our team. You get a one-on-one kickoff call with myself where I build out your strategy and then send you an email giving you the game plan and blueprint for how to implement it. And we have ongoing and a full classroom full of all the tutorials you need to implement. So if you have the workshops, the tutorials, one-on-one help, and access to me to build out your business plan, do you think that's enough support? Oh shit, yeah, for sure, Ray. All right, so that being said, can I reevaluate where are you on a scale of 1 out of 10 now? Well, with everything you do and that level of support, I'm probably closer to a 9 or a 10, Ray. All right, great. And then I would go right into that. Now let's say I get below an 8 or below a 7 for this script, right? Whatever, 7, 8, doesn't matter. Interchangeable here for this lesson. Um, what I'm going to ask is I'm going to actually ask opposite of what you guys might think. I'm going to be like, okay, Bob, so you're giving me a 6 out of 10, which means you kind of see the value here and you have a pretty good understanding of, what I'm doing and how I'm solving that problem. Is that safe to say? Yeah, that's kind of safe to say. Let me ask you, Bob, you gave me a 6. Why didn't you give me a 4? What did you actually like about the software and the platform and the solution I just laid out for you? So when they give me a lower number than I'm expecting and I'm hoping to get, normally, guys, and I got to be honest, it's very, very rare for me to get lower than an 8 or so when I do this. And when I do, I got to go back and reflect on myself and say, what did I do in the pitch to not provide the value, to not show him clearly how this works and how this solved, to not really provide the perceived value of our solution to said problem, right? I got to go back and look at myself if I'm constantly getting less than 7s or less than 8s. But even when I do, I want to ask him why not a lower number, because then he's going to start talking about what he liked about the platform. Meaning, well, Ray, I didn't give you a 4 and I gave you a 6 because this is a software that I've never seen before. I could totally see it working. It just seems a little far-fetched and too good to be true, and I'm not fully bought into it, right? So, okay, so it's safe to say that this is something revolutionary you haven't seen before, and your biggest apprehension or hesitation here is more about it being too good to be true and you never seen it in practice, right? Yeah, sure. What if I could go show you in practice right now and 5 different campaigns just off the top of my head where people improve their ad spend, improve their email metrics by using our database as opposed to their previous source? Would that help prove it? Well, yeah. I mean, if I saw it in 5 different businesses or whatever, I would then think, why can't I do it in my business? I'll show you in 5 businesses and the niche of the industry you're in. Boom. And then I'll run them through them things. And then I'll go, knowing that, Bob, now where do you kind of, stand on this product and my 1 through 10 question I had? Well, now I see it's doable in at least 5 different industries. Not only are you guys doing it, but I just saw Bob, Susie, Joe, Bill, and Jonathan also doing it as well. So it seems a little more attainable. I'm probably an 8 or a 9, Ray, actually, right? So I'm asking the questions to kind of ramp him back in and get him back up until you get up to a 9 or a 10. Again, I'll take an 8 or higher, but usually even when I get an 8, that one quick reframe that I did first, all right, well, what was missing for you to be a 9 or a 10? And then I kind of reframe that. They usually give me a 9 or a 10 after that. But before I get that, I don't really want to dive into the price, right? So, and again, just as I did it a little different. But what would make you believe this would work? And it might be case studies, it might be showing campaigns, it might be maybe. And I've always said, guys, this is kind of my downsell when the only apprehension or skepticism or reason they're not moving forward is just like lack of never seen it and I want to see the proof in the pudding, right? I might go to some type of proof of concept offer where I'm just taking a small upfront one-time fee to cover my hard costs, let them show the data works, install the pixel for a couple weeks and show them the results, build in one audience and let them run with it and look at the campaign results after somewhere from 15 to 21 days and show them the decreased cost per lead and acquisition, and then say, would you like to continue getting more audiences for your future campaigns? Show them the pixel and all the results. Hey, I resolved whatever 4,683 name, email, and phone numbers of people who visited your website in the last month. Do you now want to buy this list or these leads back and remarket to them? Right. So we can run proof of concept campaigns. I don't think that's at all necessary, and I wouldn't make that the basis or the goal, but that's kind of my ultimate downsell. If the only thing holding me back is kind of they want to see, they want to see it in action. Okay, I'll let you see it in action, and I won't do my normal, monthly fee or my normal service plan, but my hard cost just to pull this data, my team, and to embed it into your marketing campaigns is probably about 500 to 750. So a one-time fee of $750, no contract. I'll let you try the data, test it out in your campaigns, and we'll touch base and we'll review the metrics in 2 to 3 weeks, right? So at least I'm still getting a little something, letting him try it, let my list and my data do the speaking for me, and then we go back 15 to 21 days later, we look at the metrics and he's like, my cost per lead dropped by, 21%, my cost per acquisition by 26%. All right, well, you've seen the proof in the pudding now. So is there any reason going forward when you're running ads, you wouldn't target using a database like mine and you would go back to what you were doing before? Well, no, right? It wouldn't make much sense to go back to what I was doing if the costs are going to be about 20, 25% higher on both those metrics. Yeah, I would agree. So let's build you out a plan. We can get you 2 lists per month at this price, yada, 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 and then set them up with the recommended package, right? Um, cool. So, you know, this one, and I've been doing this throughout the lesson. Sometimes we want to touch in, and again, you'll see this even some of you guys that weren't on last week. Like you'll see when we go into certain sections, you'll see like us listing objections, which most people think the objections all come at the end. But what we should be doing is isolating these and weeding these out throughout the call when you can and when applicable. And there's plenty of ways to do that. So a lot of times I kind of want to overcome or close the door on said objection before it ever gets to the price and it becomes an objection, and things like that. And we have some word tracks for when we get objections, etc. But let's just say we got that 9 or 10 right, and then we want to go into the price. So, okay, Bob, you're a 9 out of 10, and you think this will definitely help your business. Are we agreed with that? Yeah, Ray, agreed. All right, well, I mean, there's really nothing else to do here, Bob, than to get rock and rolling and get this embedded into your business and let's start getting your results. The last piece in the investment. So to get you going today and never stress about rising ad costs, cost per lead acquisition, it's just $1,500 debit or credit. What's easier for you or whatever your price is for your entry level. 2 grand, 3 grand, doesn't matter. And you just assume the sale there. Once they've given you a 9 or a 10, it's very smart to assume the sale and just say, hey, boom, the last piece is the investment. There's nothing else to do rather than to get you rocking and rolling and get this embedded. Again, the investment today is just 2K, debit or credit. What's best for you? That's an assumed sale. Guys, you'd be surprised. It wasn't, I'm not saying this happens 50, 60% of the time, but anywhere between at minimum 8 and probably the high end 20 to 25% of sales calls, I've literally just done the assumptive sale and I've asked that question and they're like, hold on, Ray. And they pull it out and they're like, Ray, it's Visa for, they just start reading me the card number, right? So don't be, I don't want to say the word scared, but don't be shy to ask for the sale and assume the sale, especially if they told you they are bought in 9 or better on a scale of 1 to 10, that your product solution offer is going to solve the problem and deliver the result. Assume the sale. We're either going to get one of two things there. They're going to pull out their credit card and start reading to you, and you're probably going to have your eyes lit up like, oh shit, really? He's just reading me his credit card? And it's a great feeling, trust me. Or they're going to say, okay, Ray, 2 grand, and then they're going to dive into objections, right? And then we kind of have a breakdown in a word track for each of these. Now, in the prior script, I go a little more in depth. So anybody that's not sure about that, just so you know, if you go back into number 5 on the main link where I drop this and I share this every single week, and it's in the chat here today, number 5, this master doc, this one goes a little more in depth with all the word tracks and all the transcripts from overcoming each objection that I'm going to go through here, whether it's spouse, whether it's money, whether it's timing, whether it's in the in another program, whether it's been burned in the past, I got to speak to my partner, all those things. So there's a little more elaborate and extensive word tracks on overcoming each objection in the older script, number 5. Again, this one was all about keeping it clear and concise and short, and that's what we tried to do here. So when the objection is, and guys, this is the objection we always want, and the only one I ever want is money. I want to always drive it down to money, and then I just want to make it make sense financially for them, right? If I'm getting any other sale, normally that's some type of brush off, or it's a reflex thing, or I got to think about it, right? I got to think about it is similar to I don't trust you, in my opinion, and that's kind of a brush off. I always like to challenge that. Okay, I get you got to think about it, and we should probably think before we spend any money, but what did I not show you here today, or what aspects specifically that we discussed today are you going to think about, Bob? That way I can send you over some more resources and some more information that can give you some information on that, right? Make him tie down and what are you really thinking about? Because you just told me you need this problem solved. You're a 9 out of 10 on the solution. And if we don't get this solved, you might be out of business in 3 years. So what is there to really think about? What you're saying now, I need to think about it and wait, isn't congruent with all those other facts. Is it, Bob? And then I sit back and shut up. He's got to rationalize in his own head. Yeah, those don't really equate. I need all those things solved, and I said all those things, but now I'm not ready to take action on those. So, like, which one is it, right? That's what I'm talking about when I say hold people accountable to the words they said and ultimately making a decision that's in their best interest. And they're going to come back and thank you again, if not immediately. 30, 60, 90 days down the road when they're getting said result and they're trying, they're going to come back and say, thanks, Ray. I'm really glad you challenged me and you kind of held me accountable. Otherwise, I probably would have just blew you off, said I need to think about it, and then you would have sent me an email and I would have never replied. And we all know that happens, guys. How many sales calls have we sent somebody the details or a proposal, even when we thought they were good to go? Send me the details in the invoice and then never got it signed. Contract never came back. Payment never came through. Right? We had it in our head like, okay, this guy's all ready to go forward. I just got to send the proposal. I'll be seeing the couple grand hit my bank account tomorrow. Never happens, right? Guy ghosts you. Don't get him back on, whatever. Even if there's any reason, it might be later in here, maybe not, but if there's any reason I'm not going to close, whatever, and usually that's just going to come down to finances and he's got to move stuff around, I'm still gonna either collect money today or have that next call on the calendar. And I'll talk about that in this. Well, I'll talk about that now, and then I'll dive back into this. But what I mean by that is, let's say we say the price is 2K. Ray, I just don't have that available in my account right now, liquid. I would have to shift some stuff around. It might take me a couple days. Okay, great. That makes a lot of sense, and I totally understand that, Bob. What we can do today is I can just get a $500 deposit. That way we can get all your account information, the assessment done, get it over to my team, and start the onboarding. That way, when you shift the money around in a couple days, we already have you up and ready to go. We just turn on the switch and start getting your list made, right? Boom. So I'm at least going to take a deposit, a down payment. Let me know you're serious. Move the money around, get what you need to make the full payment, and we'll have the onboarding process ready to go as soon as that payment crosses into my portal. Boom. So I'm still doing something to make him take action. If worst case scenario, and guys, believe me, I know people in the past have had difficulty believing when I say this, but when I dive into finances, I've had times and I don't have many recordings of this because I have to stop screen sharing when somebody shows me their banking details for obvious reasons. But I've had numerous occasions where I get the person to literally open up his Bank of America, Bank North, whatever bank, or his checking account, and he'll show me what he has available. Literally. Now, if somebody's willing to show you what they have available, all I have to do is make it work, right? And if he's showing me, hey, Ray, I only have 750 in this account today, but you can see, in the past, I get a 3,000 deposit every the fourth of the month, so that's coming in tomorrow or next day or whatever, right? But he'll show me, and I'll be like, hey, man, number one, I don't want to take your last $750. And number two, I get it. Sometimes our accounts run tight and it's going to be replenished in a couple of days when a payment or a contract comes through. Totally makes sense. Hell, I don't even want to take half of what you got. I know you need a little bit of money. Why don't we just do a $250 deposit today? That still leaves you, 2/3 of what you have here in your account. You said that other payment's coming tomorrow on the 4th, Bob. And that way we can still get you going and the contract can get started and my team can get to work on this. Is that fair compromise, Bob? Right? So I'm working out what's in his best interests. And in a lot of different ways to make it make sense. But again, let's say we just finished that pitch again. We did the assumptive sale, and then he says, well, Ray, it's a lot of money. Yeah, I mean, totally, Bob. I get you. 2 grand is a large chunk of change. But if money wasn't an issue and that's, your only objection right now, would you jump in today if you had that 2K sitting right next to you in a sack right now? Would you hand it to me? Well, yeah, I definitely would. So if I was able to split up the funds and make it make sense for you today, and we didn't need the whole 2K up front, would that be something you're willing to entertain? Well, yeah, I mean, if you can make it make sense for me financially, great, right? And then even if not, all right, well, let's be real here, Bob. We all know what your situation it is, what your cash on hand, right? Credit. Let's build out a plan so this isn't holding you back months from now. So whether it's today, tomorrow, next month, or next week, let's build out a plan that works for you both, financially, as well as gets this problem solved as soon as possible. Are you willing to have an open discussion about that so we can at least build out what's in your best interest? When I do that, they are open to it. And I've got them to go on and literally show me cash on hand, credit, checking, savings, and we build out a plan to make it make sense for them. Right. So again, we go back into the assumed close after we've overcome the objection. All right. So now that we've made it make sense for you today and we split that up into 3 payments, which you said is doable, let's get you onboarded and fast track you to your first win. So you just showed me that account. Was that a debit or a credit again? Which one's best for you? All right, cool. And then you go into the close, right? So I want to give you some quick little notes about the script, and I probably highlighted this throughout lesson 1 and 2 or so, in some capacity, but just some notes that I've seen over and over again that I thought were important to put in, especially for newer reps and newer agents. If you hit an objection, don't back off. Dig for the root of the problem and the real problem. And again, hold them accountable. Generally speaking, almost every objection you're going to be able to tie back to something earlier in the conversation if you follow this framework and you go through, the discovery right, the problem right, the root of the problem, and all the aspects I covered. So yeah, use is it safe to say very often, which you probably heard me do. Would you agree with? Is it safe to say if you had this problem solved, this wouldn't be a problem? Would it be safe to say if you had the funds today, we would enroll, right? That one works very, very well, and comes from a frame of what's in their best interest. Is it safe to say, would you agree? You're putting the ball back in their court and you're not just making assumptions like many of us do, right? We always want to tie it back to their goals, not our product. Another big mistake a lot of reps make, especially business owners that have their own intellectual property or are selling their own expertise and or skill set. Like they'll always tie it back to, well, I'm great at working with clients. Well, I've delivered this many results. Well, this, like, we always have to equate it back to what's in it for the prospect, right? So, hey, Bob, you told me that you're currently at 20K and you want to be at 50K a month. And the number one blocker right now is your rising ad costs and cost per lead and acquisition, right? If I could show you a clear path to get those goals and lower that cost per lead and acquisition and increase that profitability, right? Why shouldn't we be moving forward? So again, tying it back to their goals and not necessarily my product and my software or my solution, keep the energy high. Decision beats indecision always. You guys can probably tell by me, I'm pretty high energy. I build a pretty good rapport with people, but I also deliver the message and the wording in a way that's not complex and probably not too far in the weeds. I would say that's one of the ones because I don't see it as often. I see it enough, but not as often. I didn't put in the main notes. But another one would be don't get too involved in the weeds, right? We should stay at the high level. Solutions, problems, results, and outcomes. Solutions, problems, results, and outcomes. Not the compliance aspect, the legality, the this, the that. Sure, if it's a question, certainly address it, but you don't get too in the weeds about telling where you pull the data and how you segment it all and showing them this big graph of 37 different data points. It's going to just confuse them and say, holy shit, now I'm confused by this. Confused minds never buy. Keep it simple, and kind of high level on solutions, problems, outcomes, and results, right? And as I always say, sell the outcome, not the process. Sell the destination, not the trip, right? If somebody knows you're going to Jamaica, they don't care if you flew there, if you took a boat there, if you took a car there. They really care about seeing you on the tropical beach with that fruity drink and your toes in the sand. Like that's the outcome. That's what people care about, the vacation, the destination. They don't care how the heck we got there, right? You know what I mean? Same thing with a business owner. And then optional objection segments for agents to read if needed. Again, go into these a little further. And what I always like to say is I covered this a little in the first lesson. Last thing I'm going to do before I kick it back to a Q&A and go check the chat here is always make sure you isolate and overcome objections. If you haven't done a very good job trying to suss out or identify objections throughout the call or throughout the pre-qualifying process, I know we don't all have that dialed in perfect. I'm not saying you should or you need to, but what happens when we don't do that is a lot of times we get kind of multiple objections at the end. So Bob, is there anything that would stop us from moving forward? Well, I got to talk to my wife. I don't know if it's a fit, and I really don't think I have the money for it right now. Like, you get three things at once. You don't overcome three objections. Isolate them down to one at a time, always saving finances for the end. So let's just say I got to talk to my wife first. All right, great. I totally get it, Bob. And you probably should talk to your wife and have her support before you make financial decisions. Let me just ask you one question. Does your wife support your business? Oh, that's great. Would she be happy if you're successful? Does she know you're struggling with this problem? And if she knew you had a clear solution to that problem, do you think she would support you solving it? Okay, so what is there to really talk about? Is this something like you're just doing more out of, you don't want to tick her off and be sleeping on the couch tonight, or do you just not make any decisions without her involved? Oh, so you want to do it just more out of consideration. I totally get it. But why don't we do this? Why don't we just take a deposit, go speak with your wife? Matter of fact, we can set another call where I get on with you, answer any questions, and make sure we're all in alignment. If for any reason she's not bought in, doesn't support you, or doesn't want to move forward, I will refund the deposit. But let's just get you rocking and rolling started. You go speak to her. If you guys have any questions or you want me to speak to her on your behalf, happy to set up that call as well, right? But I'm just going to isolate it back to those things first, because when we get that partner objection, usually that's one they want to say because they know it'll lead them to getting off the call and then you sending them an email and them either ghosting you or puts the ball back in their court at minimum, right? When usually the partner, if you ask the questions and you don't just say, okay, partner, I guess we can't move forward. I'll send you the details, Bob, and then I'll hit you up and we'll reschedule after you've talked to your wife, Susie, right? Instead of that, ask if she's supporting. Ask if she knows he's going through this problem. Ask if she would be happy that I got a solution to the problem. And if he says yes to all that, say, so what do you really have to run by her again? Right? Sounds like you've already had the discussion, right? And again, a lot of these are kind of brush off things they're trying to say to get off the call. Those usually comes down to the partner and the I need to think about it or I don't trust you. Those are usually what I call brush off objections. Now we'll have those certain real objections where it's the person on the call, whether a man or a woman, doesn't matter. Yeah, I don't make any financial decisions without my spouse or maybe my business partner. I totally get that. No decisions are made. Well, since that's being said, I think you have a pretty good understanding of what we do and you're pretty bought in. When is a time when you and your partner can get on the call together? I have Thursday at 3 p.m. in the afternoon or Friday at 10 a.m. in the morning. Which one's better for you guys where we can both get on the call, make sure we're all on the same page, and then make a decision then whether to move forward or not? I'm going to automatically get that second call scheduled, make sure we have a time where I can get on with all three parties, myself, he, and the partner, spouse, whatever that may be, right? So all kinds of ways you can do this. I could dive into these a bit more, but I want to leave some time for a Q&A here. So hopefully that was helpful. That's kind of closing out the new script and the new framework and the new structure, clear and condensed and just a bit cleaner and shorter than the prior script. You'll see that not much has changes. I've always considered this, and again, I'm going to probably go in and rename this because I hate the word script. I just do. I've always considered this a framework, and what you're going to see is very much, excuse me, very much similar between this and the other one is each highlighted section, right? You're going to see intro is very similar. You're going to see discovery and situation. You're going to say digging into pain, impact of pain, cost of inaction, future pacing, tie down. Like that stuff doesn't change much. Sometimes we put different names, or sometimes I will shift one of those in a different order once I've seen trends in the marketplace. Because what I like to do with my sales process and what you guys should be able to see here is it kind of stands out from what other people are doing. This isn't the same. I just sit there and question you, make sure you're a good fit, and roll off the same pitch to every single prospect. That's not what I'm showing you here. I'm showing to have a customized, exclusive conversation based on that person's problems, solutions, results, and outcomes they're looking for, and then diagnose and give a customized pitch that with your again, expertise or solution that's going to solve problem number 1 and 2 in his business right now. If we can just do that over and over again, you guys are going to see a lot more success on sales calls. So again, I'm going to go back for anybody. I know a few of you guys hopped into this meeting late and maybe didn't get this initial document. The script I covered today is the newest one added to number 9 on this document I share with you guys every week. So number 9 here, that's the script I just went over. This link I am going to go throw right back in the Zoom chat right now. For anybody that hopped on late, I'm going to go read the chat right now and get to some questions. And if anybody didn't type a question in the chat and has something, or even has some feedback of what we talked about, just type a 1 in the chat and I'll know to call on you and you can unmute. Will, your question really early on at the top, do you think it would be a bad idea to pitch custom audience with the angle of being paid on a basis of how much ad performance increases, cost decreases? So are you still here, Will? Yeah, he's still here. Can you unmute for a second? Are you able to, Will, or are you not able to speak right now? Currently. Okay, cool. So let me try to address it the best I can. I think I know what you're asking. I just wanted to specify something. Would it be a bad idea to pitch a custom audience with the angle being paid on? So I wouldn't want to do that on performance based on a couple of reasons. Number one, in almost every case, and again, unless you're a full stack in-house creative agency, and damn near every case, the creative is way out of your control. So even though we build them a custom, and again, I don't think it really matters here, William, whether you're asking me whether a custom or a pre-made, if we're delivering an audience to a client and expecting it to be run on compensation or basis of, the performance, there's still things within, I should say not within our control that can, really lead to bad production that outside the audience. They could cheap on creative. They might in the past done some really good video ads, and now with your audience, they run it to a still image that doesn't perform the same. They could decrease their budget because they paid for a little bit of data, and then it would vary the results. So I think there's just too many nuances there where it makes it a very difficult sale. I wouldn't recommend going down that slope. I think it's a quite slippery one. And that's how I can answer that vaguely. If you have something more specified, yeah, type it in the chat or whatever. Stephen, when you do decide to build custom audiences versus using an audience based off of keywords. Oh, when do you? So what I would say is it's not necessarily an audience based off of keywords. What I would say, Stephen, is generally I would, if it's already there, and it is in many cases, go with a kind of tried and true and proven pre-made in-market audience. I mean, I want to say we have a little over 26,000 of those now on the platform. So if we're in a niche or an industry where we already have a pre-made that we know has worked many times in the past, and we're just refreshing it with new data, updating it, even in the pre-mades, we can actually make them and make them a little more custom with certain keywords. But I would look at this question as more, when do I use a pre-made as opposed to a custom? And I would say simply when the niche or the industry doesn't already have a pre-made audience in there, it doesn't have one with great results or a lot of downloads, or you are in a special ad category, we're never going to have pre-mades, like, you know, anything with CBD or adult products or anything like that, special categories. So I would say custom is usually small, very niches, if that makes sense. Because I mean, you think about it, 26,000 plus pre-made audiences that have pretty much been battle tested. We have one for damn near every industry or niche you can think of, but there will be custom ones, or I should say special category that we can't do pre-mades for. And there will be always some of those small, really intricate niches of, like, we might not have a list for a sport card memorabilia company because I only know one or two of those that we work with and I do those custom, right? Or something like that. But that's how I would look at that more so, Stephen. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
Want
Thanks,
proof?
Ray. Do you mind if I comment real quick?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for answering that. I guess maybe to even further drive down this path is, you know, I can imagine that you guys might have a pre-made audience for, let's just say, online coaching or sorry, like fitness coaching, right? But let's just say my client, they focus on first responder fitness coaching. I imagine in that case, I'd probably want to customize the audience, right?
What you can do, that's a great question. So what you could do is we could do a custom if you need, but we can actually take that pre-made and put extra filters into it to just isolate a niche within that pre-made. So let's just say that pre-made of online fitness coaches or whatever you first mentioned, let's just say there's 80,000 people, and then we put in the select keywords or indicators for that smaller niche. Maybe there's only 18,000 people. We can just extract that though.
Okay, so you would start with the pre-made and then add keyword filters or like the intent filters to
Correct.
that pre-made.
Correct. And if you're ever struggling with that, either hop on office hours or DM Jaden. He can walk you through the exact process or send you a tutorial on exactly how to do that.
Cool. Yeah, I think functionally I know how to go through those motions. It's more of just like strategically, you know, like how does the data work? Because, you know, then on top of that, one of the data sets I created was actually filtering for the person's title, you know, like they were of a certain title, and those are the types of people that we wanted. So I went through that process. But yeah, it's just like sometimes I don't know where to start from, you know, the pre-made or, you know, building straight custom. Yeah, cool.
Or general context. And if you have questions about the specifics, my support team and my audience building team can help with the more functional aspect of it.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. I keep getting the Audience Lab ad, LOL. Yeah, I mean, that'll probably happen. You know, once you're in our database, that's just the way the algorithm works, whether you're a paying customer and already enrolled or not. Especially in, you know, in the metaverse, even though we update, you know, custom or our own audiences, we do a lot of retargeting, and it'll retarget anybody that's entered our database, that's clicked on prior ads, et cetera, et cetera. That's just par for the course. And it comes with part of a retargeting budget. You're going to hit people repeat times, even once they've been a buyer. Nothing we can do about that. We're going to keep dropping new ad sets. And if they hit their feed, you can certainly say, I'm already a buyer, click the button that says, I don't want to see these anymore. And then magically, they will remove ours from your feed. So you guys always have that option too, right? That's what's cool about Meta and Google ads now. The user can actually say, I want to stop seeing ads from this company. I want to stop seeing ads like this. And that particular social media platform, Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, will change the ads you see until you start, you know, either not reporting them or you start, you know, actually watching them. So yeah. For email marketing, no ads, would you sell them a list every 24 hours? Why or why not? No, probably not every 24 hours, especially for email. Number one, most people and companies have restrictions on how many emails they can send a day. So and even beyond like the day, they might have a limit or an amount they can send per week. What I normally do for clients that are looking to email is I like to ask them, and I'm sorry, I scrolled up. So this is Monica. I would ask something like, "Hey, Monica, in a perfect world, how many emails can your team market to a week? What do you have the capability to do with your email service provider?" We can market to, I should say a month. I'm sorry, I misspoke there. I would ask how many leads they could market to a month, right? Let's just say they say we have the capacity to send about 50,000 emails per month, right? That could actually be one list where I get them 50,000. You know what I mean? So that wouldn't be a new list every 24 hours. What I generally do is I find out how many they need, and then I kind of build my list to that size, and I do it in half. For instance, and just to elaborate here, Monica, all right, so you can reach out to approximately 50,000 leads per month. Why don't we do this? Just so you have the freshest data every 15 days, I'm going to provide you with a new list of your ideal audience of about 25,000 users on the first of the month for $750. Then on the 15th of the month, I'm going to provide you list number 2 at another $750. You go run the email campaigns, try it out for 1 month, and let's see your results. Matter of fact, guys, I just got feedback earlier this week, one-on-one from a client that not only already runs email campaigns, already paid for one of our big competitors in the space. I'm not gonna pull rank and call names. I could call them out, but he was using another big data provider. He's told me the exact numbers. Matter of fact, I wrote them down. I can speak within 2% anyway, but I do have them written somewhere. But with Zoom Info Ray, I was using their data before I came across Audience Lab. I tested on cold email. I had a 21% open rate and a 6% click-through rate. I started using Audience Lab data. I sent the same number of emails exactly to judge the campaign. I had a 40% open rate, almost 2x. But the big kicker, Ray, we had a 31% click-through rate. So the click-through rate on the email campaigns went up 5x by just utilizing your data. So number one, I know our data is performing in email and performing better than the other big data companies by far. I mean, a 5x click-through rate, even a 2x open rate is a great improvement, but that 5x CTR in email campaigns, that's impressive. He didn't change the copy. He didn't change anything. He just, our data versus big data company A. So what I'm trying to say here for your use, Monica, is I figure out how many people they can get to per month. I build lists to about that size, and then I sell them 1 or 2 per month, ideally 2 per month, because the data is fresher that way. And basically, everybody within the last 15 days that's in that in-market audience or search those keywords, we're going to hit with email campaigns. Then give them a new one 15 days later, sell them 2 lists per month, and that's probably how I would go about that. Now, we can take the initial list we build somebody, especially if it's tested and they're getting results, and then add in an option where we can refresh it for them daily for an upcharge as well. And that's a way you can go about that. So hopefully that answers your question. And again, I always say, yeah, one second. I always say, and I use that number there of 750 per list, because personally, that's the minimum I would ever sell a list for if I'm one of you guys. There's many instances where I can and would charge more. I'm just using the bare minimum number that I would pull and sell a list to a client for when I gave you that example. Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, just to follow up on that same thread of conversation, if let's just say they could only handle 2,000 leads a month, would you pare down the list? How would you go about doing that? Or would you just give them the whole list of
No,
25?
I wouldn't give them the whole list. I would definitely pare it down. And that's a great question. I gave a big example like this in a couple of different workshops and tutorials in the past where I did this for a client. But basically what I'm saying is if you know they can only get to 2,000 per month, and let's just say you pull an audience for them and it's got 40,000, okay? And you give them the whole list. Well, number one, they're probably not going to come back and buy from you for about 8 months because of all the data they have. And number two, if they can only get to 2,000 a month and you're giving them a list with 40, think about by the time they get to people 8, 10, 16,000 on that list, how old is that data by now? 2, 3, 4 months? Those people have already found the solution to that problem. You know what I mean? That data is now dated. So I want to give them and if that list first has, let's say 40,000 on there, Stephen, and we know they only need 2,000, we can segment that list down into little chunks and only give them, little increments of it, right? So hopefully that answers your question. My example to that was there's a lady I was working with a couple years ago. She owns a company called thecreditbureau.com. Her name's Tina. When I first got on the call with Tina, she goes, Ray, I want everybody in the US that typed credit repair in the last 30 days. I go do that search. I find about 520,000 people. Okay. Big audience, over 500,000 people. Right. I go back to Tina and she doesn't know I found this many yet. And I go, Tina, in a perfect world, how many people does your team run marketing to per month? We have the capacity to do 25,000 plus. Okay, 25,000 plus. So 25,000 to what? And then she's like, well, probably 25 to 30,000. We don't do much more, but we can do a little more. Okay. So about 25,000 per month. So again, Stephen, my thought there is I'm not going to sell her a list with 500,000. She's never going to come back and buy another one, and 80% of that data is going to be dated by the time she even gets to it. So what I did is I said, okay, she wants credit repair and she wants about 25,000. So then I just took my own knowledge. All right, well, she's looking for more, low income, more affluent neighborhoods. So I started with Detroit and I got 25,000 right there. I gave her that list. Next time she needed one, I went to another inner city and I just kept pulling ones. And I think we'll have a more dialed in audience than being as general as credit repair. Now I'm credit repair, high affluent, low income neighborhoods where more people are looking for credit help. And I'm finding more with only around, the amount of people that she needs. So I could do like a mass search of the whole country, find about 500,000, or I could just go to little cities and here's 25,000 here, here's 25,000 there. And then she would come back and buy a new list every month. She bought one off us for about 16 months straight.
Wow. And that makes a lot of sense. And I've been in here for a few months now. And actually what I found is it's really important to drive home the message of what makes this data so unique is its high intent audiences that you're building. And if you mistakenly allow the client to take this data 3 months down the road, like you just mentioned, it's like they've already found their solution. So
Correct.
really it is about staying really embedded with your client, really close to them, giving them fresh data. And yeah, so it makes a lot of
Correct.
sense.
100%. You're going to kill yourself on people coming back to buy, and you're going to kill yourself on the effectiveness on the data if you give them way too much. That's just the byproduct of that happening. Guys, I have a sharp stop here. I know a lot of times we go over, and there was a few more questions. Sorry, I didn't get to everybody's. I'm already getting messages. I have people in my next waiting room. So, please shoot me a DM if it was an urgent question and I didn't get to it. Happy to answer it, make you a loom, give you a quick voice note or text reply. I will be posting this replay in the school sales channel within a couple hours, and feel free to hop on next week and we can pick up the conversation or anything I didn't get to. Sorry, I tried to lump it all in here, guys, but I didn't leave enough time for the Q&A. My bad there. We will see you all next week. Same time, same bad channel, same DaaS workshop. Bye-bye, guys.